Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel, where I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise. And I think I've got a little something special for this stream. Thank you, YouTube recommendations. But first I just wanted to update everyone, just in case you haven't seen this. My friend Nick was at the big March for a Casa in London today. He traveled there all the way from Wales, and he said, you know, a march is big when you nip away from the march to get something to eat, and when you're done eating, the march still hasn't finished passing by the place you're eating at. Apparently, he said roughly 500,000 people in London alone. Apparently, they blocked the Bay Bridge in San Francisco. They filled the streets like 3 days running in LA. Berlin had a huge one, despite the just absolute ghoulish attitudes that are fostered by the state there, which use support for whatever the fuck Israel does as a cheap and profitable substitute for doing anything about anti-Semitism in the country. But the huge demonstration in Berlin. And I was talking about the supply chain and the importance of that and how sensitive it is to disruptions in situations like this yesterday, and it occurred to me to mention what maybe people in chat already know this, but the International Longshore Workers Union has a policy of respecting community pickets, and a few years ago they shut down the port of Oakland when there was a community picket called I believe it would have been actually in support of Gaza that time as well. So that's an idea. Just thought I'd mention that. But okay. Now I imagine there seem to be a fair number of Thought Slime fans on my in my chat usually, and you probably remember a video Thought Slime did a few months ago, actually probably closer to like a year or so ago, called Veganism is Incomplete Without Anti-Capitalism, actually, which was a response to a buck-wild, ignorant-ass video by Unnatural Vegan, who has, on previous occasions, said some pretty eugenicist shit, and in the video that Mildred was responding to, described herself as a neoliberal despite clearly not knowing what that actually means. The way she defined it, she seemed to mean social democrat, except she didn't know that word. She also said that she didn't actually know what any of the words she was using, and she went through this whole like condescending thing about how there's this huge amount of evidence against communism. Didn't name any evidence. Well, and it's one of my favorite sort of ding dong takedown videos by Thought Slime. I watch it quite a bit. And what I did not know until last night in my YouTube recommendations, I was informed of this, is that Unnatural Vegan did a 2-part response video to Thought Slime's response video. And it just occurred to me, that is the sort of that would probably be worth having a look at. So there are 2 parts. I will introduce you to them. You actually see them on the screen right now. Hello, Hiroko. One is Thought Slime thinks I'm a racist, which is a bit of a weird statement because Thought Slime did not call Unnatural Vegan a racist. He did point out that she had come out in favor of eugenics. I mean, so I wouldn't be surprised if she turned out to be kind of racist, but Thought Slime never actually said that. And the other one is called I Need Evidence to Show There's No Evidence for Communism, which is a response to Thought Slime pointing out that she kept on talking about the overwhelming evidence against communism and never named any. So chat, of those 2, which would you like to start with? I can't imagine that this could be bad content. Oh, and thank you. Yes, I got this. A friend of mine bought a whole bunch of them in Jordan years ago. I thought, out of solidarity, I would put it on stream. Since there's no protest happening anywhere I can get to. So, any preference from the I need evidence to show there's no evidence for communism, or Thought Slime thinks I'm a racist? And, well, both of these are a response video to Thought Slime's response to Unnatural Vegan's completely ignorant ass video. Yeah, bonjour. I'm kind of inclined to do them in order, since Thought Slime thinks I'm a racist is part 1, but I can be convinced otherwise. And as usual, do let me know if the audio needs to be tweaked at all.
At Pacific Foods,
yeah, fuck off.
Tomatoes ripened on the vine.
Treat them responsibly?
Yeah, this video quality sucks. Goedenavond. Ja, het is mondelijk, maar ik weet niet. Ik weet niet waarom ik een video zal maken op Afrikaans. En de mensen die mijn video's bekijken, praat meestal geen Afrikaans niet, so. Yeah, yesterday they kept on giving me Joe Biden fundraising ads, and it's like, read the fucking room, algorithm.
Treat them responsibly? By killing them? So a while back I posted this video, Vegan YouTubers Call Out My Ignorance, about socialism, and some people were kind of upset that I didn't include this video from Thought Slime. I did.
Well, yes. So, I like that she titled the video Vegan YouTubers Call Out My Ignorance About Socialism. I wonder, okay, is this going to have any insight in it? Is this going to be... It doesn't seem like it. But okay.
Didn't, because I was using my, 3 strikes system, and he got 3 strikes before making any anti-capitalist or socialism arguments, but I still get people asking me if I'm gonna make...
What is the 3-strike system? Okay, does anyone... I have never really watched this Jabroni's videos. Can anyone tell me what the unnatural vegan 3-strike system is? I'd be more interested personally, Hiroko, if uBlock Origin could please update their shit. Because I hate having this stuff show up on stream. I don't like having... I was trying to listen to the Leningrad Symphony last night. Because it's another symphony that was composed... It was a symphony that was composed under another siege, much like the one in Gaza, and it is an absolutely brilliant piece of work. And since it's long, it keeps on getting interrupted in, fucking crucial bits. By fucking ads for just bullshit. And it's like, no.
A response to the video, so I figured I would. This is going to be a 2-parter, and it's not going to be following the strike system. I'm just going to respond to everything because, again, we wouldn't get very far if I were giving strikes. Part 1 is going to be focused on the non-capitalist stuff, the first few minutes of the video, and then part 2 will be focused on the rest of the video.
And I've been vegan for the past 6 years or so. Very little actually tempts me to eat of the forbidden flesh at this point. That is until other vegans, particularly white vegans like myself, start speaking. It makes me want to eat animal products out of shame so that people don't associate me with them. You know exactly the type of shit I'm talking about. Some complete skunk ape tumbles butt backwards into a discussion of indigenous hunting rights to say that actually all hunting is wrong.
I know that he's joking about vegans making him not want to be vegan, but I just want to comment on it because there are non-vegans who seriously make this argument. I remember...
well, you mean the argument that it's actually kind of racist, that white veganism is racist as fuck a lot of the time? that there is a problem of racism in the vegan movement. Like, there's a problem with racism in a whole lot of places, and a problem with ableism.
Furious Pete basically tweeting that years ago, that if more vegans were nice to him like I was, that he would consider going vegan. It's amazing they don't see what a self-own that is. Like, you're so obsessed with public opinion, you won't do the right thing for fear of what, being seen as weird, crazy.
That wasn't the point at all. This isn't about being obsessed with public opinion. It's about, like, don't do racism. Is that what not doing racism is to a natural vegan? Just being obsessed with public opinion? Is this gonna be like some sort of moppin' shit? We're gonna get some, like, vegan moppin' thought here?
The extreme, whatever. Or you won't do the right thing because people are mean? Anyway, his comments on indigenous hunting, at least this part of it, is fine.
Some complete
Well, I mean, that's great. She says that, like, don't be racist is fine. I guess we're supposed to give her points for that?
tumbles butt backwards into a discussion of indigenous hunting rights to say that actually all hunting is wrong.
It is ridiculous to believe that all hunting is wrong. Some people have to hunt to live. There's also the invasivore argument, which is that it might be a net positive overall to eat certain invasive species. But this ultimately is not what Thought Slime is saying.
Well, yeah.
In an emergency, doctors make life-saving decisions, but government's extreme abortion ban ties the hands of doctors, putting women at risk when complications arise later in pregnancy. Issue 1 stops the ban. Vote yes.
Oh, fucking hell. Another one. See, I don't actually completely mind that particular ad, even though I'm irked by the government's ban. Like, I mean, like, it just sort of... Why not just say whose ban it is? Or just leave that out. The word didn't need to be in there. Like, who's that for? But yeah, in Ohio there is a vote to amend the state constitution that would actually, I mean, foreclose a lot of the attempts to ban abortion in this state and keep the shit out of the federal courts, which isn't a horrible thing. But, so, I don't completely mind that one keeps getting shown. I mean, I hope a lot of people see that one, actually. That is, like, the one exception. I say a lot about how, I mean, electoral politics is a dead end. Binding referenda, I am a little bit more flexible on, precisely because of the bit where they're binding referenda, and you actually get to directly do the thing, rather than hoping that some motherfucker's gonna come through on their promise to do it. But, yeah.
On stolen indigenous land has the right to condemn traditional indigenous hunting practices.
So all indigenous hunting, regardless of the reason for that hunting, is ethical? Is that what he's saying? Or maybe...
What he's saying is that your colonizer ass doesn't have a right to actually opine on this subject. That's what he's saying.
It's not, but just we aren't allowed to talk about it because we're white? Honestly, I doubt he's thought to...
Because of the genocide. It's because of the genocide.
Deeply about this. A lot of the super social justice-y, more irrational types make this sort of argument a lot. But also...
the irrational types who think racism is bad.
What he and others are saying is that one group or race of people that he's identified as settlers can't criticize and...
I don't think he's the one who identified them. I think they became settlers when they colonized somebody else's land and killed them. And then stole all their shit.
Another group of people that he's identified as indigenous because of some...
What's this he's identified as? What's this? What the hell is that? Like, is she saying that none of these things actually exist? What's the point of this?
Inherited racial sin. White people bear some...
It's not an inherited sin. The point is, there was never actually a point where indigenous people got their shit back. They're still actually being harmed by the fact that this land was stolen and the colonization is ongoing.
Sort of responsibility for the actions of our ancestors. I'm guessing it doesn't matter if the settlers' grandparents were born here. I'm guessing it doesn't matter that all humans in North America migrated here at some point in history. Or that...
No, it doesn't, actually. Oh god, she's gonna do the, indigenous people had war. And it's worth noting that actually, the English colonizers wrote extensively about how actually the indigenous people they encountered and genocided they derided how soft their warfare was because they didn't do killing enough. Hey, River Rune. Well, yeah, she is. I mean, that is why she is very much off base, and that is precisely why she's a candidate for the last JabroniCon.
Different tribes of pre-European North Americans were killing each other, enslaving each other, torturing, scalping each other, stealing land from each other.
And that makes the genocide okay? Like, I mean, this is some PragerU shit right here.
Long before white people arrived. I don't say this to disparage First Nations people.
Well, then maybe don't say it. I mean, maybe just don't say that.
All humans, unless they were really super isolated, engaged in heinous shit, in terrible tribal warfare. Anybody who believes there's some pure human lineage with no history of xenophobic conquest...
yeah, that you're still doing the thing. You maybe just don't do the racism in the video where you say Thought Slide thinks I'm racist. Like, this is way more racist than I knew she was.
They've got a lot to learn. And if they think that ancestral purity is morally relevant to the descendants of those lineages...
It's not about purity, it's about fucking colonization and genocide and stuff. You gonna acknowledge that at all?
Pretty racist. Thought Slime's claim is racist in two ways, actually. Against the settlers for asserting...
Oh, she's doing some reverse racism shit. She's competing for the Vosh audience now.
Inherited original sin, and also against the indigenous peoples for suggesting that they aren't capable of rational thought,
which he didn't do,
or moral growth. Actions can be justified by need, again, hunting because you need to eat, but not by culture. Whether
that wasn't the point that's being made.
That criticism is actually useful, is effective, that's a different matter. But making claims about the right to make the argument based on one's race or ethnicity...
Sometimes a familiar face can be terrifying. When sleep's a distant dream, who will you turn?
Not great. Now, I think all of...
Wait a second, I'm 4 minutes into this fucking video and it's already giving me my second ad.
This comes from a good place. I talked about this in my response to the kind of woke is veganism wrong video.
Appropriation quinoa. It is worth noting that quinoa is a fucking indigenous staple food in large parts of South America. And the fact that white liberals have suddenly discovered this shit at Whole Foods has caused the supply for them to go down and the prices for them to go through the roof. So it is actually, like, directly harming the people who cultivated and crossbred and basically developed quinoa over thousands and thousands of years.
But ultimately, it's just infantilizing. It's trying to put people into some sort of like mental or moral confinement, some sort of safe space, kind of, right?
Oh, wow, I mean, she's just ticking the boxes here.
Because
is she going to tell us that the facts don't care about our feelings now?
Doesn't think they're sophisticated enough to handle veganism. I think...
Is this like Ben Shapiro in that, like, gender swapping Snapchat filter?
we should respect people enough to be honest, to not draw arbitrary lines based on skin color.
It's not an arbitrary line. There's, like, people who are still being deprived of their land, and the people who have exploited it and, to a great extent, actually seriously fucked that land up.
Or one's ancestors. Culture changes all the time. It's no justification for cruelty. If my culture of southern barbecue and fried chicken doesn't justify cruelty, then neither does someone's culture of hunting.
Indigenous people were living sustainably with the land for thousands of years until we showed up and fucked everything up for them. And I think it's a little rich to then decide that since we can't treat animals responsibly, we have the moral high ground to people that have demonstrated that they can.
Treat them responsibly? By killing them? Again, he's not talking about...
Yeah, there's a little bit of a difference between indigenous hunting practices and, like, fucking modern capitalist factory farming. And let's remember, the reason I've even heard of her is that she's a big fan of capitalism. Big defender of well, I can't really call her a defender of capitalism. She never really gets around to defending it. She mostly just goes and misuses words and things. But, yeah. So, this is getting off to a great start for her. I mean, she's really acquitting herself of the accusation that Thought Slime had not actually made, that she's racist. I mean, Thought Slime had not actually said a damn thing about her saying anything about indigenous people. She decided, she saw that, and she's like, oh, there's a racism I didn't do. Let's fix that.
Hunting for survival. He's talking about people with a certain background hunting.
For survival! Like, for survival. They're hunting for survival. That's the point. It's subsistence hunting. Yeah, that is kind of one of the key aspects of indigenous hunting practices, is they tend to be very much for survival.
Hunting just because your ancestors hunted is not ethical. You might as well say that my Memphis culture of Gus's fried chicken is ethical because it's my culture. You can't question it.
No. But, well, I mean, I am not entirely surprised to find these sorts of reactionary attitudes among a white-ass vegan from Memphis.
Maybe he just takes issue with factory farming, again, talking about the living sustainable. It sounds like that may be more of his issue. I could rescue a bunch of chickens and kill and eat them. Would that be treating them responsibly?
That would not be what we're talking about.
As far as is possible and practicable, does not give a pass to culture or someone's desire to live like their ancestors or something.
It's not somebody's desire to live like their ancestors, motherfucker.
It's for, like, you're a child, you have to eat what your parents give you, you're institutionalized, you have severe allergies or digestive issues, food security issues, or financial issues.
I mean, I have to say, it is, given how shitty she is on so many other things, I mean, leave aside for a second that actually she's describing the situation of a whole lot of indigenous people in the stolen land that she's on. I mean, incarcerated, food security issues. This is like, I mean, that is kind of like the situation. Not to mention digestive issues, because the thing is, I mean, when you've had a culture of eating basically the same staples for thousands and thousands of years, and suddenly colonizers go and introduce stuff that your body has never had developed any real acquaintance with, that can fuck around with you. I mean, that is an issue. That's why, like, diabetes in Pacific Islander populations is a problem, because colonizers brought a whole bunch of shit that they, that they cultivated in monocultures and stuff like that, replacing indigenous foodways, and their bodies were not really prepared for it. Well, she's already basically said she doesn't give a fuck about their culture, so I don't think she's big on the pondering in general, I think.
The only argument I think you could make for culture, and it's not really for culture, would
It's not an argument for culture, though.
be if someone would be extremely ostracized or isolated by going vegan, by their family, by their friends, etc. I think that would be a pretty good argument.
Well, maybe see, the main point was that maybe the people to be broaching this argument in indigenous communities are indigenous people and not some white-ass colonizer from Memphis
Against that person going vegan.
who clearly doesn't know shit about this subject and has built an entire YouTube presence based on not knowing shit about things.
They're not able to get out of the situation, right? There's a lot that goes along with something like that, and I certainly would be sympathetic towards someone in such a situation where their family and their friends, their culture is so hostile to veganism. But again, that has to do with the person's own...
Like, I mean, does she realize, taking this sort of utilitarian standpoint that she is, that every time she opens her gob, she is turning a lot of people off of veganism who might otherwise find arguments in favor of it persuasive, just because every effort that anyone makes to sort of combat the racism and ableism and shit within vegan spaces is undone by somebody like her talking about this stuff.
mental health and ability to be happy. It doesn't have to do with culture in and of itself. Point is...
yeah, because culture has nothing to do with mental health and ability to be happy. Being deprived of your culture doesn't cause any problems at all. I mean, look at indigenous people and how they famously have such wonderful mental health ever since they were colonized. I think she has not really considered the idea that people might be unimpressed with her arguments. Well, I mean, the key with the entire U.S. government cheese system and things is it is all based on the idea of dealing with the entire way that in the Great Depression the farming system was sort of sustained. And so it's a combination of things like acting as a buyer of last resort. Well, I think Thought Slime already exposed her, but I'm just going for the dunking here as a way to, for 90 minutes, not think about the fucking horrifying shit that is going on. That is just, I mean, fucking emotionally overwhelming. But so the idea is they will pay people not to grow some things for a while just to avoid a glut on the market. It's a whole price stabilization thing. And these days, very little of that sort of... You don't really see that government cheese shit very much anymore. There's a fucking cave of the stuff under St. Louis. But that isn't so much how it works anymore, the sort of direct food distributions.
We can be understanding, we can be sympathetic of others' situations without tiptoeing around everything and being...
Yeah, why do you have to just not be racist? Why do you have to care about indigenous people and stuff? You're just trying to flex your moral superiority as a white YouTuber from Memphis.
So careful and so worried about offending people. Killing animals just to kill animals is wrong.
Nobody's talking about killing animals just to kill animals, though. Literally nobody's talking about that.
Period.
If you disagree with that, you're probably just a racist.
The irony of someone who just expressed beliefs that are dictionary definition racism.
Oh wow, we got the dictionary definition. I mean, this is seriously, is this Ben Shapiro in a gender swap Snapchat filter?
No settler on stolen indigenous land has the right to condemn traditional indigenous hunting practices.
calling the people who disagree with those beliefs racists.
Yeah, well, yes. People who disagree with not being racist are racist. That's kind of how that works. I mean, I just love that she hadn't said anything about this in the original video. She specifically decided to step on this particular rake for no good reason. She just like, okay, well, Slime pointed out that something is pretty fucking racist, so maybe I should just like do that as part of my response.
Okay. The null hypothesis, the assumed position that doesn't need to be defended, is that people are cognitively and morally equal and free to exchange ideas regardless of race or ethnicity.
That's not what a null hypothesis
We've
is.
got piles of nourishing veggies, all certified organic.
Like, that's like literally not what a null hypothesis is.
And free to that doesn't.
The null hypothesis is a hypothesis which the researcher tries to disprove, reject, or nullify. That isn't a null
need to be defended is that people are cognitively and morally equal and free to exchange ideas regardless of race or ethnicity. If you want to argue
yes, let's go. Let's freeze some peaches here. Go on.
something else, which he clearly does, then the burden of proof is on him. Assertions and character assassination just don't cut it.
PETA out there is saying eating a chicken sandwich is literally the Holocaust. No, it isn't, PETA.
I don't really like those comparisons because I think they're just inflammatory and ultimately counterproductive, but they're counterproductive because people misrepresent them.
No, I mean, they're counterproductive because it's actually kind of fucked up. I mean, again, they're counterproductive because that shit's actually fucking racist. Because there's a big difference between, again, I mean, like, killing anything specifically for food and killing people specifically so that they aren't there anymore. There is a difference there.
Interpret them just like Thought Slime did. He's saying that comparing two things is equating two things. And just FYI...
Well, no, they are literally equating it. I mean, they are literally equating it there.
This quote is actually from a Holocaust survivor, Isaac Singer, or more specifically from a character in one of his books.
Yeah, a character in one of his books. That's kind of a distinction. Like, I mean, I've got a novel, I've got characters who say all sorts of fucked up shit. You gonna attribute those fucked up things to me? They're characters I don't like.
Speaking to his own beliefs, and his grandson still champions the cause. Like the victims of the Holocaust and...
Yeah, and do you see how there's a little bit of a difference there? Like, there's a big difference between drawing attention to these things as one of the people who has been, like, ancestrally, historically targeted for genocide over and over and over again by whitos like yourself, and fucking around with that shit as one of them. Yeah, exactly. I mean, her null hypothesis is just it's just this whole goalpost moving thing. The idea here is that the null hypothesis is that society doesn't exist and we all live in a vacuum and there is no history. That is her null hypothesis that she believes that everybody else should argue against.
Animals are rounded up, trucked hundreds of miles to the kill floor, and slaughtered. Comparisons to the Holocaust are not only appropriate, but inescapable, because whether we wish to admit it or not, cows, chickens, pigs, and turkeys are as capable of feeling loneliness, fear, pain, joy, and affection as we are. To those who defend the modern-day Holocaust on animals by saying that animals are slaughtered for food and give us sustenance, I ask, if the victims of the Holocaust had been eaten, would that have justified the abuse and murder? Did the fact that lampshades, soaps, and other useful products were made from their bodies excuse the Holocaust?
Actually, lampshades and soaps, it's worth pointing this out, because you hear Holocaust deniers try to make a meal of this. There were rumors within Auschwitz that people were being made into lampshades and soaps and things like that. Because it was a place where all sorts of hideous, fucked up shit was happening, so nobody could dismiss that out of hand, because every single one of them arrived there not having any idea that what was in fact going on there could possibly be going on. But historians have never unearthed any evidence that there was any kind of making of soap or lampshades. But, fucking Holocaust deniers then like to say, well, the historians say that there are lampshades that were made out of the Jews, and that's not true. So therefore, every other thing that except the historians don't fucking say that. And second of all, there still is a big difference between deliberately trying to exterminate a population and killing people. Killing anything specifically to eat it. And yeah. She's decided to go. She's decided to go for this. This is, wow.
No, pain is pain. My grandfather wrote, "As long as human beings will go on shedding the blood of animals, there will never be any peace. There is only one little step from killing animals to creating gas chambers a la Hitler. There will be no justice."
Oh, that's kind of weird, because if there's only one little step from there, isn't it kind of interesting how only in one place has that step ever been taken, whereas killing animals for food is almost universal? It's not that every single culture does it, but that pretty much every single geographical area includes at least some people who do. Isn't it interesting that sort of genocidal shit overwhelmingly tends to be the sort of thing that comes out of one particular region in the world?
As long as man will stand with a knife or with a gun and destroy those who are weaker than he is.
Stop government from stripping away our rights. Protect our freedoms by voting
Jesus,
yes
how many
on
fucking
issue
ads are we gonna get?
Halloween sale at Displate is on, with scary good deals on all.
This is
We
ridiculous.
all have the power to stop suffering and misery every time we sit down to eat. It's a really powerful analogy, but like I said, I think it's fairly counterproductive no matter who it's coming from.
You think it's fairly counterproductive, but here you are defending it. And the issue isn't whether it's counterproductive, the issue is whether it's sort of fucked up to be making that sort of analogy, always against people who have specifically been smeared as subhuman, because it sort of validates that on a certain level. That's kind of the problem with it. This woman, her deep thoughts, if you tried to dive in them, you'd break your neck.
I just don't think people are ready to hear it. And as a result of that, I think it seems to pretty clearly cause more resistance than understanding.
And while I think veganism is generally the morally superior option for those that can live on it, I don't think I'm anyone's moral superior. I don't have the right to sit in judgment of how you or anyone else in the world eats. Considering all of the plastic I waste on Beyond Meat burgers, I don't think I'm in a position to do that.
So I truly don't know if he's making a joke here. So
No, he's not making a joke. The point is, there's nothing about this that makes you somehow a better person. Because all you're doing, it's just fucking consumption. It's just you're trying to find a moral way to consume in capitalism, and there is no moral way to consume in capitalism, because no matter how you do it, there's going to be at least some quantum of misery that is being caused by the production of the thing that you're consuming. So you aren't morally superior. You may be drawing a sort of moral line for yourself that is not necessarily a line other people are in a position to be able to draw, but that doesn't mean that you've suddenly graduated beyond consuming things that are harming others, for fuck's sake. Well, she's got a whole bunch of subs, which is why anyone's heard of her, so apparently there are people.
I guess kind of assume that this is serious. I apologize if I am missing something.
You're missing a lot of things, actually. It's interesting that she can't, she doesn't even want to acknowledge the idea that this does not make you somehow a better human than other people. It's like she can't entertain the idea that that's serious. which really tells you a lot about how she sees herself. That she actually does think of herself as other people's moral superior to be standing in judgment like this.
Being like socially inept. Obviously no one is perfect, and obviously plastic packaging often isn't ideal, and I do think it's good
often isn't ideal. God, this is so PragerU. This is like PragerU does veganism. Yeah.
This to express that veganism isn't about moral superiority or about non-vegans being evil. But I also think that these super social justice-y types like Thought Slime often take it to the extreme, where they're seemingly...
Like the extreme of acknowledging that actually this does not make you, like, somehow morally superior to other people. That doesn't seem very extreme to me. That seems kind of a basic thing of...
constantly looking for excuses for bad behavior. Constantly looking for a reason to give non-vegans a pass or even to demonize vegans. Again, I think it's coming from...
Well, no, fucking Mildred does not need to look. When it comes to your videos, you don't make it hard to look. It's easy. Like, if somebody actually thought that your ass was representative of all vegans in the world, that would be enough. That would be a condemnation enough. In fact, I would imagine a lot of people, would imagine that she actually is sort of representative of all vegans in the world, and that's kind of part of the low opinion that they enjoy in so many places.
I think it's coming from a place of compassion because they don't want to criticize anyone or anyone's habits or, dietary choices. But ultimately, it leads to beliefs like hunting by certain people because of their ethnicity, because
it's subsistence hunting, which you yourself just said was okay.
Their background can't be questioned, and what he just said.
Considering all of the plastic
so she literally does think that she is, a superior human being.
Based on Beyond Meat burgers, I don't think I'm in a position to do that.
Some plastic packaging is in no way comparable to breeding animals into a life of suffering and death.
What do you think happens to animals who encounter that plastic packaging in the wild, since it lasts forever, basically? Do you think that maybe that hurts some animals? The plastic packaging that, there's a fucking garbage patch in the ocean that is as big as some mid-sized countries, and you think that's great for the animals, do you?
And even if he was making a joke, again, there are non-vegans who actually seriously say this. Beyond Burgers are just as bad because they're wrapped in plastic. So
well, yes, and you should actually maybe take that argument serious for a minute, because if what you're talking about here, if your point is to engage in a moral searching and analysis and understand the relative harm that is being done by various consumer choices in capitalism, then yeah, you do have to take that seriously, because even if we just specifically limit the harm to animals, that stuff fucks up lots of animals all the time. They eat it. It enters the food chain. It poisons them. It is a driver of fucking extinctions. So, you can't really... If your concern is animals specifically, you can't pretend that doesn't enter into it. Are you saying that an animal that, suffocates on some plastic packaging in the ocean is better than an animal than them being fished out of the ocean and suffocating that way? Because the way I see it, they're both dead.
Vegans are bad too.
Well, yes, actually, we all are. It's capitalism being good in capitalism is basically impossible, because capitalism ensures that no matter how good we try to be, something is we're going to be harming something. The whole thing is based on creating these situations where there's always going to be some harm, even in situations where that's totally unnecessary and merely a product of how the society is organized. Like, I mean, she literally just wants some sort of facile moral superiority points here.
Animals and most animal byproducts for the majority of people living in the developed world is a terrible thing to do. Using plastic packaging is debatably bad. And when that
It's debatably bad? Wait, I thought it was all about the aminals for you. Like, I mean, I thought that there's like a million different ways in which it's bad. You're saying that's debatable?
Is accompanied by Beyond Burger or some other plant-based meat, it's very likely still a net good.
Well, very likely. I mean, why don't we look into it? Like, how are you coming up with very likely? I mean, other than it makes you comfortable.
I'm not particularly familiar with Unnatural Vegan. The only thing I know about her is the one time she on accident fully endorsed eugenics, and Faye Fahrenheit had to explain, actually, preemptively aborting disabled people is evil.
I believe a woman should have access to any and all information regarding her pregnancy that she thinks is relevant information, including information about the fetus. And I believe the choice to carry a pregnancy to term or to abort the fetus should be up to the woman who is pregnant. With that information, I believe most women will act in the interest of their would-be children, and they'll make the compassionate choice to abort if the child will have some debilitating condition that will severely impact quality of life. Supporting a mother's choice to have an abortion due to birth defects that could cause a child to live an unhappy life or could put a family...
Well, yeah, except the thing is that a lot of people have... well, I mean, this is at such a level of generality. And she's managing to combine two things. Because there's the issue of, should the state intervene and deprive pregnant people of the right to make decisions about whether to continue a pregnancy? And obviously, fuck no. Fuck that. Always. The question of whether some exercises of that right are necessarily good and should be encouraged is another matter. And, like, selectively aborting fetuses with disabilities, that's kind of fucked up. I mean, there are situations in which it's like literally, there are birth defects where there's not going to be any viability at all. There are all sorts of different things, and that's why it's ridiculous to have this, to talk about this at this level of generality. But, I mean, when people with disabilities point out that like, for example, let's take this in another direction, which, I mean, this isn't all that far off at all. Because, like, people, eugenicists have been, like, looking for, like, the gay gene and the trans gene, specifically, very explicitly, for the purpose of selectively aborting, queer people. Selectively aborting anyone who might turn out to be queer once they were born. And, I mean, is she gonna say that's a great thing? Like, there is a little bit more to this than that. That doesn't mean the state should have the power to deny the right to do that. That doesn't change the fact that it is a matter of just bodily autonomy. But that doesn't mean that that's like a completely morally neutral thing that there isn't any discussion to be had about in those particular cases.
Due to medical costs has nothing to do with eugenics. Eugenics is defined as an intentionally coercive policy that seeks to systemically optimize the genetics of a population.
She doesn't say anything about extent of, it doesn't say anything in this dictionary definition about intentionally coercive. It just says the practice or advocacy of controlled selective breeding of human populations to improve the population's genetic composition. Like, there's nothing in here about coercive. There's anything about forced. It's just controlled selective breeding of humans. That's eugenics. Like, I mean, did she read this before she put this up on the screen? Because it's like literally just the thing she's advocating.
If there's no coercion involved, it's not eugenics. If the goal...
Again, read the fucking definition. You came up with this. You're the one who found this definition. It doesn't say anything about coercion. This is like, she could have found another definition that does. I'm sure that somebody else has defined it that way. But she picked the one that does not have fucking coercion anywhere in it.
Isn't systemic or population-wide, and it's not specifically genetic, then it's not eugenics. But
it is population-wide. If you're saying that is a thing that should simply happen, then clearly that is a thing. Then you're saying that is a thing that should happen on a generalized level.
People really want to broaden the definition.
You're narrowing the definition you came up with. Like, did you read this before you made this video?
The way that Thought Slime has, that's fine. It just means that virtually everyone is pro-eugenics, including Thought Slime. Or does he think the anti-eugenics bill in North Carolina that would ban abortions based on a Down syndrome diagnosis is good, actually?
Again, two separate things. There's a difference between saying this is something that should be criminalized and that the state should prevent, and saying this is a thing that ought to happen. Like, I don't think it's a good idea to do crystal meth. I do not think the state should criminalize it. There's a lot of stuff I think is actually probably a really bad idea, and I wouldn't do myself, and I wouldn't recommend anyone who asked me, that I do not think should be criminalized. Like, I mean, is she, like, calling for the does the fact that she advocates veganism mean she wants to, like, criminalize people eating any meat? She should understand the distinction here.
You'd think that someone whose whole thing is about valuing the lives of animals might stop and think, hey, it's kind of fucked up that I'm saying some human lives inherently have no value.
It's not some human lives. No.
Well, yes, there is some human lives. That's what you were just saying.
First or second trimester fetus has innate moral value, in my view, because they're not sentient. It's not inherently morally wrong to abort them for...
She's a fan. Okay, I'm going to call it right now. I don't know much about her, but she likes Peter Singer. I'm going to just say that, because this is some Peter Singer shit. This is his, like, eugenicist stuff, where he's, like, said that in some cases it's more morally okay to, like, kill a child with a disability than to kill some animals and stuff like that. And, I mean, it's all very fucked up.
Any reason, even if it's just that someone doesn't want a baby right now, even if it's just because they want one boy and one girl. Once the person is sentient, then obviously they do have moral value regardless of a disability, even a severe one that makes them...
So you're going to make this about... you're going to make this about sentience? Like, so when do you... So she... Okay. She's trying to suggest that Thought Slime would be in favor of criminalizing some abortions, at least. And she's going to say that the line that she draws is at sentience, which is, like, literally a fucking anti-abortion argument that they, like, they make all sorts of claims about when the fetus can, like, feel pain and stuff like that. So, like, who's making the anti-abortion argument here?
Suffer terribly. It's for this reason, because they do have moral value, that we should start being as kind to our fellow humans as we are to our pets, making euthanasia available so that a baby who is suffering terribly from some terminal condition can finally be given peace.
Fucking hell. Like, I mean... This was supposed to be her defense against being accused of being racist, which she wasn't, and eugenicist, and she's decided it's just going to be all racism and eugenicism all the time? Holy shit! Wow!
Just to be clear, because I know this is going to be twisted beyond belief, I do not consider every disability, you know, missing a leg or being deaf or being blind as justification for euthanasia. A mother is not wrong for bringing such a child into the world, and
Oh, well, that's big of you.
obviously it's not totally black and white. There are certain conditions where it's just not clear whether or not an abortion would be the most compassionate choice.
No living being should ever eat processed food for every single meal of their life.
Fuck
What I'm
off.
specifically talking about are more severe and painful conditions that for most people would genuinely make life not worth living. So that's part one.
Yeah, but, I mean, the thing is, it's like trying to engage with this stuff is difficult because she has absolutely, there's like no depth. She just says things without any regard to like anything. Like, I mean, she pulls up a definition of eugenics and then starts talking about, well, by definition that's not eugenics, except by the definition she pulled up, it's like literal eugenics.
And I hope you enjoyed it. Again, part two will be focused on the socialism stuff, the more political stuff, I guess.
Yeah, well, yeah, because none of what she just said was at all political. I mean, she doesn't see what's political about any of this. That's kind of amazing to me.
Thank you so much for watching.
Okay. So,
Now, if you
now, here we go with the bit where she responds to how Thought Slime called her out for talking about how there was overwhelming evidence against communism without ever providing any evidence. And her response to this is to say, why should I need to provide evidence? So here we go.
say that it was done wrong and that's not how you would do communism, okay, fine. But please realize that you then go from evidence of it being bad to no evidence.
Well, you haven't provided any evidence so far, so let's see what she does with this.
Which is also bad. Please do not upend an entire economic system based on no evidence.
But the point is there's lots of evidence. There's, amongst other things, overwhelming evidence that capitalism is going to cause the extinction of all life on Earth if we allow it to go on for too much longer. And I would say that that's pretty strong evidence against the system she defends, but let's see.
This is part 2 of my response to this video from Thought Slime. I think I said before that this would be the last part. That's a lie. There is a part 3.
There's a part 3?
So let's get to it.
Seems to me, based on the 2 videos I've seen from her at least, that UV takes a position based on her gut instinct, argues it from a place of authority, and does not for a moment stop to ask herself, wait a minute, why do people disagree with me about this?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, having actually just sat through an entire video of hers for the very first time, that does sound exactly like what goes on. Like, there's a lot of motivated reasoning, there's a lot of just straight up ignorance where she just does not seem to comprehend what she's even arguing against. And then the rest of it is just arguments from authority and a lot of just Ben Shapiro shit.
Why do
Hello,
you get mad
Phoenix.
when I talk about this? If she did, I assume, she would demonstrate some sort of understanding of her opponent's position so that she could argue against it.
Isn't this the same guy who called women evil for making the very common decision to abort fetuses with...
Like, literally, no. Literally, this is not... That didn't happen.
say, Down syndrome?
Preemptively aborting disabled people is evil.
To use his own words, he argues authoritatively from gut instinct.
As opposed to you. So you're going to bring the research. She's going to bring the research this time, you see. I mean, she didn't do it the last time. She didn't know what socialism was. She didn't know what exploitation was. She didn't know what neoliberalism was. And she even identified herself as neoliberal, despite, like, defining it to mean social democratic or something. But this time, she's totally gonna bring the evidence, I'm sure of it. But I mean, I have to say she's not getting off to a very strong start, like lying about something and then showing that she lied.
Jumps from subjectivist to cultural relativist to dogmatic absolutist. There's no consistency.
Okay, so those are some words that she heard recently.
I don't want to believe it, but I do think things through to the best of my ability, obviously.
See, I would have like assumed that this was not to the best of her ability, just out of charity.
I think nobody is perfect, and I do work off of a particular framework.
Yes, it's called liberalism. It's called white supremacist colonialist liberalism. Oh, I am absolutely unsurprised that she made a bunch of anti-intersectionality videos. Okay, Phoenix, you're more familiar, clearly, with UV. When I said a moment ago that I bet she's a big fan of Peter Singer, would I be collecting on that bet?
Of course you're going to disagree with me about certain things. Consequentialists, for instance, don't care about justice in and of itself. We care about outcomes in terms of things like suffering and happiness.
Except you didn't seem to care about outcomes a minute ago when you were trying to say that that plastic is not harmful. You weren't all that worried about outcomes then. You just sort of brushed it aside.
Super social justice-y types like Thought Slime are the opposite.
Well, I like how she does not actually define, Thought Slime very specifically describes himself as an anarchist communist. And she, will attach any label to him, apparently, other than that. Perhaps because she doesn't know, she doesn't know what either of those words mean, and we're about to hear a little bit more about that. It's great. I mean, I should do, a fucking DVD box set of the jabronis we've looked at on stream to talk about communism and don't know what the hell it is, even a little bit. From Caleb Muppet to PragerU to fucking Tim Pool to, Weed Lord. All of these ding-dongs.
So they care much more about justice, even at the expense of outcomes. It's a fundamental...
Wait, what does even at the expense of outcomes mean? You're saying that there are outcomes you would consider good but unjust? What does that mean? Can you give a fucking example? Oh god, yes. Is she a TERF? Because a lot of the self-described skeptic communities seem to have there was one big sort of GitHub fork, and some of them went off and decided to do a major in racism, and then the other ones decided to become TERFs. Admittedly, you got a fair number who decided to do a dual major, dual carding, became racist TERFs. But, yeah.
Disconnect that cannot be resolved without talking through the ethical systems that underlie those assumptions. And Thought Slime, like most of us, clearly is not capable of such a discussion because...
who's most of us? Is she including... She's clearly not including herself in there, despite the fact that she's already demonstrated that she is not capable of carrying out this discussion because she doesn't know what the words mean.
He's not even aware of his own ethical assumptions, which is fine.
He's done entire videos discussing in depth what his ethical assumptions are. Has she actually watched any of his videos?
Don't be such a dick to people who disagree with your half-baked beliefs.
She's calling beliefs half-baked now. So, I guess she's going to actually attempt to learn a little bit about the thing that she's arguing against. Ooh, skip ads. Yay.
Just a thought.
Take, for example, when she defines neoliberalism like this.
For those who don't know, neoliberal is your typical left-leaning social progressive, but also being generally pro-free market with few restrictions on a lot of industries like housing, but also very pro-welfare state.
Yeah, like that's totally wrong. That is just complete nonsense. She does not know what the word means.
Libertarians would say. Neoliberals want a substantial safety net, often even
And know that like neoliberals have been the ones that have been like destroying the safety net. They're a big part of why there isn't one in the U.S. to speak of, or like just barely.
Supporting public options like healthcare, for instance.
That's another thing neoliberalism opposes. Like seriously, this is she's. I don't know why she's showing this. Did like watching the Thoughts Line video not give her pause to actually look and see what the fucking word means?
For instance, not all neoliberals do. Of course, there's going to be disagreement.
No, that's not what neoliberalism is. Like, full stop. There's no room for interpretation here. She's just wrong.
Yeah.
Neoliberalism is an economic theory of deregulation, austerity, and globalization.
Deregulation, austerity, and globalization. Exactly.
Wait, okay. What do you mean exactly? That's the exact opposite of what you just said. That's the exact opposite of what you just showed us yourself saying. What do you mean fucking exactly?
Except he doesn't know what those things mean.
It's actually...
Oh, she's gonna... Oh, this is gonna be good. He doesn't know what deregulation and austerity are. I can't wait to... She's gonna school him.
Neoliberal policy to reduce government spending on welfare and government aid of any kind.
Nothing in austerity necessarily means a decrease in social spending.
Whoa, she's just using Wikipedia here. First of all, like everywhere in practice, where the term is used as a euphemism, yes, it does. Wherever you hear politicians talking about a policy of austerity, they are talking about destroying the social safety net. Like, just flat out. A set of political economic policies that aim to reduce government budget deficits through spending cuts, tax increases, or a combination of both. Now, one could take issue with this for the fact that often a lot of austerity policies end up spending, so-called austerity, spend way more money than before, but they change who they spend it on. Like, you have, like, in Britain, for example, they went from, they combined benefit cuts with huge subsidies for these bogus, like, fly-by-night welfare-to-work companies, just to make life hell for benefit claimants. And they ended up spending more money as a result of that.
Unless we're talking about a shift from social spending to investment, which is something neoliberals promote. Austerity can actually mean an increase in social investment to generate more tax revenue.
Yeah, that's not the same thing. That is like, she doesn't know what these words, she really does not know what these words mean. She should have just taken this L.
If I had to guess, she probably looked at the dictionary.com definition, which reads, neoliberalism, noun, an outgrowth of the liberal political movement that is more moderate than traditional liberalism, especially in its embrace of free market capitalism. And then her train of thought probably went something like, liberalism is, Bill Clinton, who himself was a neoliberal, or something like that, so therefore, to be more moderate than that is to be Bernie Sanders, a social democrat type.
No, and I'm very aware that Bill Clinton is neoliberal.
Yeah, except, you just, not by your definition, because by your definition, it wasn't that, because he opposed the social safety net. Like, a big part of the reason that there really isn't much of one left in the U.S. is fucking Bill Clinton.
And I think I said in the follow-up video that my political beliefs align pretty closely to those of the Clintons. In terms of Sanders, no, I greatly dislike many of his beliefs. I would never consider him neoliberal. He's a protectionist like Trump and about as fiscally irresponsible. And,
Yeah, I love it. She just uses this stuff. She hears these terms. She doesn't actually reflect on what they mean. What exactly does fiscally responsible mean? Why is it that fiscal responsibility always seems to mean giving money to rich people rather than, like, letting working people have some?
free trade, open borders, pretty important.
But neoliberalism doesn't do open borders. It does open borders for rich people and for capital. Neoliberalism does not open borders for everybody else. Like, you try to cross from Mexico into the U.S. without the right papers and see how fucking open those borders are. You'll get shot. You try to, as a refugee, to cross the Mediterranean to try to seek asylum in Europe and see how open that fucking border is.
Important for neoliberals.
At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite.
Jesus Christ, how many fucking ads is this?
They charge you a lot.
It's like one ad for every 2 minutes of video.
I know what neoliberal means, and I know what these
No, she literally doesn't.
things mean in the modern context of socioeconomic research. Not a lot of people self-identify as neoliberal, but...
Yeah, because it sucks.
For those who do, that's what it means to most of them. While the British definition he cites later may partially excuse his confusion that it necessarily means cuts to social services.
It literally always means cuts to social services. Like, provide one example where neoliberalism specifically involved spending more on social services rather than finding ways to cut them into shit and privatize them. Like,
he doesn't
one example.
explain why he thinks a decades-old UK definition is relevant to...
because it is the accepted definition of the term. She literally just does not know what the term means. And, like, rather than just taking that L and acknowledging, yeah, she is kind of politically illiterate, and maybe should have become a little bit more aware of these things before speaking with authority like she likes to do, maybe it... yeah, I guess you could, I see what you mean with River Rune.
My modern-day political affiliation here in the U.S.
Yeah, except a very different welfare state, except neoliberalism in the U.S. See, the difference is that the U.S. never had a welfare state anywhere near as good as what they had in Western Europe, for various reasons. So the result is that even at its height, the U.S. was already in austerity mode by European standards. So when neoliberalism hit, of course, the welfare state was under much more constant attack and receded much farther. Much faster in the U.S. than Europe. Like, and it has evolved substantially in the past decade. No, it hasn't evolved substantially in the past decade. That it's been bad. Yeah, I mean, the difference is that Britain still had something left of a welfare state even after Tony Blair. Like, where is she going to point out an example of where neoliberalism resulted in more of a welfare state than there was before?
If you still want to deny self-identified neoliberals' lived experience of being...
you are, like, the only self-identified neoliberal who claims to be for any kind of a welfare state. But, okay, I mean, it's funny that we were just talking about turfy red flags, but the fact that she's, like, trying to make this about lived experience and self-identification, that she calls herself neoliberal despite not knowing what the term means and opposing very key things. And she just sort of makes that into a joke about lived experience and self-identification. That's kind of turfy.
Being neoliberal, and instead define it in a way that supports your own rhetoric.
The way that everybody else uses the term. I mean, does it not give her pause that nobody defines it the way she does?
Maybe don't do that.
Likewise, she has a very inconsistent view of what exploitation means, and it sends her into a complete logical tailspin.
Yeah, and like she literally pulled her entire discussion of the concept of exploitation from a Wikipedia page. That's the extent of her fucking research. And that Wikipedia page, she specifically took the section that discusses how neoliberal ideology views the concept of exploitation.
making some wild arguments that are legitimately difficult to tease apart the logic of. She posts this screenshot from Wikipedia with some economic jargon about exploitation, with no explanation. She presents this as an ideologically neutral statement, that exploitation can only occur in imperfect capitalism due to imperfect competition. But if you actually look at the Wikipedia article, though, you'll notice that it's under the neoclassical notion subheading, which she seems to have deliberately cut out in her video, which strikes me as a little dishonest.
Okay, let's see. How is she going to answer this? Because we know it's going to be careraja. She is she is a big believer in, I believe it was Agricola, who said that crime once exposed has no refuge but in audacity. And so how is she going to deal with the fact that, yeah, she specifically left out the bit where she was using a very specifically ideologically driven discussion of exploitation rather than just looking at what the word means.
Super cool taking that clip out of context and removing the audio. Dishonest, even? No, I don't think he's being dishonest, I think.
Well, yeah, but what about you? Are you going to talk about how you left out the bit where that was from a very specific section? You going to explain why you did not decide to point out that this was just the neoclassical notion of whether exploitation exists?
I think he just does not understand what I'm saying. I've talked before about how
he actually did specifically said it was hard to make any sense out of what she was saying, so she's not going to address it at all.
All use is abuse. The same goes for exploitation, which refers to unfair use. Some vegans say you can't be vegan unless you are socialist or communist, but there's nothing in the term or the definition.
She likes to just use fucking dictionary definitions. Yeah.
Definition that is anti-capitalist. So the argument is something like...
So the idea is that we're just supposed to take the vegan society's definition as completely authoritative and not examine whether there is any... whether there are any implications in it, or not go any deeper than just the exact words they said. Well, I mean, I think she meant that vegans need to work with racists because otherwise she'd have no friends.
Veganism means no exploitation. Exploitation is capitalism. Therefore, veganism means no capitalism. Two very big problems with this. First, you have to accept the very specific Marxist definition of exploitation.
Which is not actually true, as Thoughtslime points out.
Capitalism, which is essentially begging the question when you define anti-exploitation as requiring Marxism because you've defined capitalism as inherently exploitative.
Like, just pause on that fucking sentence for a second. Like, I legit can't, diagram that.
The point is, Marxists are begging the question by using this specific definition of exploitation that they have selected to condemn capitalism. It's
sometime.
Except, what's the specific definition? I mean, Thoughtslime actually gives a definition that he's using.
A familiar face can be
Shut
terrifying.
The fuck up.
Dream. Who will you turn to?
It's like vegans saying meat is murder and then defining murder in a special way that is...
But Marxists do not define exploitation in a special way, is the point.
Killing or paying...
Whereas you're using a special definition of exploitation specifically from a discussion of how neoliberals define it in order to pretend that it doesn't exist in capitalism.
For killing of an animal, or anti-choicers calling abortion murder. Neither of these are murder in any technical sense, only in the more informal and secondary definitions, which is not what people mean to evoke. Exploitation is a complex concept, but there is always the thread of unfairness, which is also a...
No, there isn't, actually. I mean, exploitation, as Marxists use it, simply means using somebody else's labor in order to make money, which is literally just what capitalism does.
Complex concept. Marx's definition is common among Marxists, obviously, but...
Well, what's the definition? Are you going to give the definition?
You can't assume it, and there's nothing in the definition of veganism that specifies Marxism.
Okay, can you give any Like, are you going to give the definition that you're arguing against? Or, I mean, because Thought Slime gives the definition that he's using in that video that she's responding to, and that she's decided to leave out for some reason.
You can check out the SCP entry for a more in-depth understanding of exploitation. It's a concept that's existed long before Marx and has also long been compatible with capitalism. While the SCP might not be quite as critical of Marx as I am, he ultimately offers a very juvenile account of exploitation, ignoring the many externalities of business that laborers don't experience. Again, this is a very...
But are you gonna explain what the fucking... Are you gonna engage with the fucking definition?
Very complex concept. It's not even possible to make an uncontroversial claim that sweatshop labor is exploitative.
Well, it depends on how you're defining exploitation. But I mean, it's really... She really is, like, speed running all the reasons. She is really just fucking speed running all the reasons anybody has ever, like, had side-eye for vegans here. Like, she's managing to just tick all the boxes. Now she's gonna be like fucking Nicholas Kristoff with, what's fucking sweatshop apologetics?
The only relationship that is unambiguously exploitative is that of multi-generational ownership as found in slavery and animal agriculture.
But how are you defining exploitation? That like, Thought Slime gave a definition of exploitation, a very clear definition. You're just, like, arguing against it without saying what it is. I mean, this is, like, maddening.
There is no choice, there is no competition, and there is no metric by which to establish what a fair exchange could possibly be, because...
But, I mean, you're just describing exploitation and capitalism, because the thing is, workers don't have any choice either. It's a choice, you can choose to be exploited by one capitalist or another capitalist, but you cannot choose not to be exploited at all, because the exploitation is the only way you can get the means of survival.
Because there's no market there to judge by. Again, it's absolutely...
There's no market in like, economies based on slavery? Where the hell does she get that from? There's... Well, you've tuned into the Unnatural Vegans' Buck Wild attempt to respond to Thought Slime's debunking of Unnatural Vegan. And she just got done explaining how, despite the fact that she doesn't know what neoliberalism is, she is doubling down on that. And before that, she put up a definition on screen of eugenics that was the opposite of what she said it was, and she said that was proof that when she was advocating for selective abortion of fetuses with disabilities, that could not possibly be eugenics. I mean, yes, definitely sub to Phoenix Rising. Yeah, I mean... This is... She, wow. She is impressively clueless. And she is, like, she is a real monument to the immortal science of Dunning-Kruger thought here. Because she speaks with such authority, and every word that she says is fucking nonsense. Such complete nonsense.
Question begging to make a Marx-based argument by trying to employ the exploitation clause in the definition of veganism.
That isn't how begging the space. It isn't a Marx-based definition. Like, why are you gonna show us what the definition was? Because Thought Slime gave a specific definition. And I mean, what she's doing actually is a great example of the question begging she's talking about, because all she's doing is saying, her interpretation of one vegan organization's definition of veganism is the authoritative definition, and you're not allowed to read anything into it other than the things that she reads into it.
It's like a Christian saying that God exists because the Bible says so.
Or like somebody saying that veganism does not require anti-capitalism because the Vegan Society's definition says so. And then when you when somebody says, yeah, that doesn't make sense because exploitation is a thing within capitalism, and if you're going to get rid of it, then you really need to get rid of capitalism. Then turning around and saying, yeah, but the Vegan Society's definition doesn't say that you need to get rid of capitalism, therefore that's the end of the discussion. She's literally doing the thing she's talking about. Like, I mean, is this on purpose? Is this a bit?
And God wrote the Bible, so you know it's true. You can't assume the Marxist definition and then argue from that.
Every other paragraph on this Wikipedia article said something different about exploitation. The one she chose to highlight is the one which conveniently conformed to her worldview. I have to wonder whether she actually read...
Why is she showing this? Because, I mean, this is like literally just pointing out how dishonest she is still being. Like, does she not understand she doesn't have to show this stuff?
Anything on this page, because it's chock-a-block full of socialist critiques of exploitation. Every paragraph, except the one that she quoted, would blow pretty much every iota of her argument here out of the water.
Is it nicer of me to believe he's lying about having read it, or that he read it but just didn't understand it?
No, they just both make you look pretty full of shit, actually. I don't think it's a matter of relative niceness. I mean, we've just established that you're really kind of dishonest. And it sounds like maybe you also didn't have much luck with the reading comprehension on all the paragraphs you had to get through in order to get the one bit you cherry-picked out of there on Wikipedia. Which is obviously the thinking person's source for these things. I mean, when I look for somebody who's deeply engaged with the topic, I mean, what I'm looking for is a citation to Wikipedia. And with that, it is time to wrap it up for this week. Thank you to everyone who's joined. Thank you, Erica Phoenix, River Rune, Adria, and everybody else. Always great to see you all. I hope you enjoyed the stream as much as I did. And if you enjoy the stream, please consider supporting the stream, which you can do by leaving a little tip here. Helps me cover my expenses, and that helps me continue doing the work, doing this stuff. And so, and with that, let me also just drop the Discord link for anyone who's not in there. Invite people. Oh, my great pleasure, Hiroko. And let me just say, the Colin Thai translation, I am down to 23,000 words in the entire book. I expect within a month I will finish the draft translation of the whole book. And within a month after that, I will have it edited. And and in addition to being available freely to all on my Patreon, it will be coming out in book form from Haymarket. Have a good night. Thank you to everybody. Hope to see you in the Discord and look forward to